Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another podcast episode. My name is Alicia Gogan, the host of the Glow Up Secrets podcast, where I help you expand your mind and become more self-aware so that you can glow up into the best version of yourself. Hello, how are we doing? Well, if I were to answer that question, I am doing a lot better than I did yesterday. Yesterday, guys, I had a little bit of a mental breakdown, and the reason why I'm telling you guys this is because it helped me remind myself to forgive myself more. And I want to talk about forgiveness in today's episode, okay? Because I know a lot of you guys need to hear this message. A lot of you guys had asked me on the podcast Instagram to talk about forgiveness, so we're going to talk about it, okay? So recently in my life, there has been a lot of things moving. And with change comes the importance sometimes of being strong, being in a good mindset, holding myself together, really just persisting in a new direction. I know things are changing. I know I'm evolving. It requires me to be strong and all of that. We've been talking about that quite a bit in the podcast. So I've always been somebody who, when it's not that it's tough times, but when things are presenting in my world and they're shaking me up a little bit, I'm like, okay, got to get on my routines. I got to get my mind right. I'm going to use my logic here. I'm going to trust that things are happening. I'm going to, be strong. It's what I do. It's what I do best, the same way a lot of you guys are very much so like me. So I was doing that. I was doing really good with responding to a certain circumstance in my life that has been happening as much as I could, in terms of still being able to feel my feelings and letting myself, all of the ranges of emotions. But at the end of the day, coming back to you've got this, being strong, persisting through my days. And I was doing good. And then yesterday morning, waking up, doing my journal practice. My journal practice is something that really just makes me feel safe. It makes me enjoy my safe space. Talking to myself in a beautiful, loving way, the same way I have always needed my mom to speak words of affirmation into me. When you're scared or you're getting bullied at school or things are just a mess in your life, who do you want to call? You want to call a parent, you want to call somebody who really just is gonna make you feel good. Sometimes we don't have that. And sometimes I don't even call my mom for those things anymore. And what I do instead is I call on myself. So that a lot of the times is my journal practice. That's what I do is I'm really just being there for myself, in good times and in hard times. So waking up in the morning, trying to do my journal practicing, trying to think about situations in a different light, also letting things go, really just pouring into myself. Last week's episode, I told you guys, when things aren't feeling good, come back to yourself and just speak to yourself kindly and pour in that love that your inner child really needs for you, instead of trying to even look at situations in a different light. Let things go, detach from things that are annoying you right now or distressing you. And that's what I was doing. But even that, it wasn't hitting. Even that, I was I still didn't feel really good. So I kept trying, I kept whatever. And I was just getting more frustrated with myself, more annoyed. Honestly, the weather wasn't even the best. And I think for so long, I was being really strong that I definitely was just hitting a breaking point. And so I went on a walk. I was just irritated. I was annoyed. I was frustrated. I was getting in my head. And when you get frustrated and when you get in your head and you start to spiral, you sometimes you just keep going into that spiral. It's hard to pull yourself out of it sometimes. A lot of the times that I can, to a certain extent, but I was really going down there. And then I tried to do more things that were trying to help me in a way, and I was triggering myself more, if I'm being honest. So I got to a point where I, let's say, acted out of character just a little bit. And I don't actually whatever. I'll just leave that till the last thing I'm going to say, because I look at it differently. But for how I usually deal with situations, I was I just did something that I knew it was just going to trigger me more, but I did it. Okay. So I did the thing and then I instantly regretted it. And I was really annoyed, and like that triggered me more. And that was like, I was so anxious. I was anxious about the action that I took, but also I was really mad at myself because I was like, you know better, like very much so. Why aren't you being strong enough? And then I had to go to hot yoga right after, which was literally, this is why my day was so hard. I swear to God, was because not only did I completely spiral out of control and then I took action out of that spiral, then I had to go into the hardest hot yoga class ever with my feelings of anxiousness and just like wanting to run away and like hide in a freaking cave and just deal with the situation, because that's what I do when I get really anxious sometimes, which is pretty rare. Like I'm not like usually like this. I used to be like this a lot more when I was like always triggered about everything, but you know, I'm still human. So anyways, went to hot yoga. It was like the hardest thing, although in hindsight, and even as I was going through the class, I was like, you know what? This is like the hardest feeling right now, but this is making me stronger. This is making me more resilient. Every other second I was thinking about the situation, and then I was fine, and then I was not, and then I was fine, and then I was not, whatever. Finally, we get out of the class, and I was like, oh my God, I did this. It's one more minute, like longer, and you're going to feel a little bit better. By tonight, you're going to be a little bit okay. And that's what sometimes you have to do when you're like spiraling or like things are just not okay. Like you genuinely have to talk to your inner child every 3 seconds, being like, babe, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. So I get out of hot yoga. I feel kind of okay, but I'm like still like, you know, annoyed, frustrated, spiraling. And then I have a few clients that helped me like over the time, whatever. And then at the end of the night, I knew I wanted to obviously no longer be in this spiral and be so anxious and mad at myself. And I knew that I wasn't going to just completely change everything and like tomorrow I was going to be a brand new person, but I did really want to address this. And this is what I do when I'm going through hard times. I'm very skilled in being able to deal with myself, aka my inner child. And in hindsight, I'm really happy that I went through this, because this was something that I needed to tap into more, and I haven't done it in a long time. And I think it's a good practice to do. And that is forgiving myself. So when I was done my workday, I was so sick and tired of beating myself up for doing an action based off of being human. Okay. And I was just speaking to myself out loud, and you can always like journal and stuff if you want to. But at this point, this is when you know I'm really having a breakthrough, is when I'm speaking out loud to myself. Like genuinely, I usually just journal, but when I'm really going through things, it's like literally just talk to the freaking wall at this point. And I was like, heaven forbid. It's almost like I was like yelling at somebody that wasn't me. I was just like preaching to the choir. Heaven forbid I mess up, quote unquote, mess up. Heaven forbid I take the wrong step, or I say something that, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said, or like I did something out of the plan. Heaven forbid I have human emotions. Okay. Because this is really what it came down to. I was being so freaking strong, and I was doing everything that I possibly could and using all the modalities that I had. And I'm just like being as, you know, strong, whatever. And the reality of it is I still have emotions. I still have feelings. I'm still ebbing and flowing through life. Okay. So no amount of logic, no amount of right things to do on paper is going to change that, is going to erase the fact that I feel the way that I feel. This is not about excusing whatever action I did. It's not about that, but it's just to be like, you know what? I am no longer going to be mad at myself for being human. I am not sorry for being human. And that's what I kind of kept looping on, like an affirmation towards myself, was like, heaven forbid I am a freaking human being. I'm sorry. I am no longer being pissed at myself for doing something based out of a triggered state, out of a place of, yeah, I wasn't able to be as strong as I really quote unquote wanted to be. And then I tapped into this energy of, you know what I'm so tired of? I'm so tired of being the person who is always strong, who's always doing the right thing, who is always being perfect. I'm tired. And this is not about, oh, okay, I want to be the evil one. I want to screw up everything. I want to be chaotic. I want to be the crazy one. I want to mess everything up. It's not about that. But I am done being this person who is telling herself that she can never make a mistake, that she always has to be perfect. It doesn't even make sense. You can't possibly. Like, even the strongest of strongest people break down. And I like to look at myself as very like strong. I can get through a lot of things. Like, I can really use logic to really keep me like stable through some of the hardest things, which then create really good results in my life. But there are just times where, you know what, the situation doesn't need you to be strong. Like, I want to, and I thought about this too. I was like, I want to live in a life where, yeah, you know what, sometimes my hands go up and I say, I can't do it. I want to be in a world where I'm supported even as I quote unquote screw up. And if I think about this in terms of relationships too, like, wouldn't I want to be in a relationship where there's room for error, there's room for forgiveness, there's room for, okay, like, you didn't like say the right thing, or you did this or that. Like, I want to be in those type of relationships, but I can't even have that relationship towards myself. So I'm looking outside of me for friendships, for romantic partners, for even like business, like everything, right? Content, everything. You have a relationship towards everything. And like, I would really want, you know, somebody to forgive me, but I can't even forgive myself. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. I'm just going to end up creating circumstances where, you know, it's going to be high standards. You have to be perfect. And I don't want to be like that. I'm not even like that towards other people. I am somebody who's very forgiving. I am somebody who unconditionally loves people. I blame my mom for that, but I don't really blame her, because I think that that's like something I would never want to change about myself. But it's like, where's that same unconditional love for yourself, Alicia? And whatever you're currently going through in your life, I'm sure this advice is probably like hitting right now. Like, just think about, do you really want to keep going in this direction of always being strong? And I do think when it comes to relationships, and we're not technically talking about relationships right now, but like, don't you want to have somebody show up for you and take care of you, and for you to not always have it all together? And you know, I think women, we're always talking about feminine energy, and I want a masculine man, and I want somebody to provide and protect and take care of me, and I don't want to do this all alone, blah blah blah. You cry about wanting to do that, yet you don't actually show up in the world like that. You don't even give people the opportunity to be like, okay, let me hold a bag for you. Like, let me be there for you. Because you know why? You're like, no matter what, I'm going to be strong. And I'm not saying for you to drop the ball just so people can pick it up for you. But at the end of the day, it's like, sometimes you have to drop the ball, let it drop. You know what I mean? And another reminder that I told myself is, I didn't mess anything up. And I think you really have to remind yourself of that when, you know, whatever it is, if it's relationship thing, it's a job thing, if it's working out, eating healthy, like being on your shit, you got to tell yourself you didn't mess it up, because that's going to allow you to be able to have open conversations with people if you need to repair or rebuild that connection. It's going to allow you to get up and continue to move on. Like, if you look at the situation like you messed everything up, what are you going to do? You're going to keep making the wrong decision, quote unquote, wrong decision. You're gonna, you know, probably spiral yourself into more self-sabotage. If you think that you messed up your diet, what are you gonna do? You're gonna keep eating cake because you're like, oh my God, all my progress is lost. So there does come a bit of reminder of like, you didn't mess anything up. You're okay to make mistakes. Now, this really brings it back to like some childhood stuff for a lot of us. And I think for me too, it's like, I always had this energy towards myself of like, you can't mess up. You cannot mess up. And if you do, it means X, Y, and Z. It means like you're going to get in trouble. And that's why I don't want to mess things up. You know, like if I made a mistake or if I spoke out or if I, you know, did the wrong thing, I was definitely afraid of my dad yelling at me and getting me in trouble. So we carry that subconscious belief like, oh my God, if I say this thing or if I do this, this person's going to walk away. I'm going to mess this up. This person's not going to love me. At the end of the day, it really does all come back to love. But you can't be afraid. Sometimes you really just can't be afraid. You have to be willing, honestly, sometimes to be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe that person's not going to be happy with me. You know what? If I be myself and I be human and I have emotions and this person doesn't want to accept that, you know what? Then maybe that person is not for me. And again, it's not about condoning you to be this chaotic mess and for you to be a toxic person, but the truth is you are human. I don't care how strong you want to say that you are, you have feelings, you have emotions, you can only be so strong for so long. Now, if you struggle with forgiving yourself, I think something you also have to remind yourself of is the things that you most likely did that you're deeming either self-sabotage or a mistake or something that you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Why did you most likely do that thing? For me, let's bring it back to the fact that I was completely so triggered and so anxious. I was in fight or flight. I was honestly in a trauma response that was like way younger than I ever am now. Like obviously, like this was like a young part of me that was coming online to the point where I literally like couldn't really like do much for her. Like I really tried to do as much as I could. And so I'm not going to get mad, and I need you guys to stop getting mad at yourself for the things that you do in survival mode. You do things for a reason. I'm not condoning the reason. We're not saying that it needs to be right. We're not saying that everyone needs to accept that. But the truth of the matter is the things that you do in your life, you're doing it because you're triggered. You're doing it because you feel unsafe. You're doing it because, you're trying to find safety, whatever it is. Forgive yourself for the things that you have done in survival mode. And I even think about this when it comes to eating. And I talk a lot about this in my book, The Ultimate Glow Up Guide, link down below, get at your bookstores. I did a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors in the form of binge eating, emotional eating. And I used to get so pissed off at myself. I used to be like, why do I keep failing? Why do I keep going back to these things? They're not good for me. And then I created this cycle of self-hate. And then that led me into more binge eating because I just thought that I always messed things up. But I went to the root, and I tell you guys that in my book, that realistically what was going on is I was driven to eating unhealthy foods, lots of candy, all of my life because I felt unsafe in my environment. And that's the things that kept me safe. I was learning to emotionally regulate from a very young age around my father through things like candy, through things like being quiet and staying small, through things like going into the fawn response and doing everything that he wanted me to do, even though I was uncomfortable, even though, I had needs that needed to be met. I put those to the side and I listened, and I was a good girl because why? I was in survival mode. And when I really understood the reasons why I was doing the behaviors I was doing and learning, oh my God, I just needed more support. My young self, she needed her mom there when she was afraid, and her mom wasn't there because she was working. She needed certain things in her life, affirmations, friends, family, more support, more X, Y, and Z. She didn't need candy. That wasn't going to be the thing, but guess what? That was the only thing that I could find. So you know what? Thank you to young Alicia for doing the best she could to keep me alive. And I know sometimes it's hard for you to think like, okay, that's like survival, but genuinely eating candy for me was me surviving. That's all I knew. When you're a child, when you pick up these behaviors, that's literally subconsciously like what you're doing for yourself. And we get mad at ourselves for doing these behaviors now in our adult lives because we're like, I know better, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? There's a part of you that does not know better. So when you are overwhelmed in your life, you go back to how you know how to protect you the best way possible. You go right into that fight or flight. And for you, maybe it's eating candy, or if it's binge eating, or it's suppressing your emotions, or maybe it's going right to text your ex, or, going to party, or going to alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. That's why we do the things we do. There's always a reason. So I need you to forgive yourself for the things that you've done in survival mode. And I think that this is important for you to understand as well, because then you can understand why you keep doing certain things if you've done this over and over again. For me personally, I knew I was just being way too strong for way too long, and I just needed to let it out. And I really allowed myself to, and I forgave myself quite easily for that. Maybe you have been doing things in your life that's like you've been doing it. And this is a great time for you to see, one, you're doing things that are survival. Okay, why? What do you need instead? What is your inner child crying out for you to see? There's always something. And again, I do talk about this in my book, and I give you guys journal prompts so you can kind of get closer to the root of your current self-sabotaging behavior and figuring out what habits maybe that you can put in place instead of the current habits that you might be using for self-sabotage. But at the end of the day, I think the best thing that's helped me be able to really forgive myself and like let go and move on so that I can continue to level up in my life is really seeing like everyone's acting out of their own survival. Everyone's trying to stay safe. We all have habits, unfortunately, that are keeping us safe, even though they're actually not, because they're unhealthy or they're causing a little bit of chaos, or maybe I shouldn't have said that, whatever. It all is rooted back to something, and you need to understand that so that you can actually move forward. Now, another thing that can help you forgive yourself is to potentially apologize. And what I mean potentially is sometimes you don't need to apologize for something because maybe like you didn't like actually do something to somebody. For me, in my personal like situation that had happened, I didn't like hurt anyone. Like I didn't actually I don't need to apologize for anything that I did. It was more I was just mad at myself because I had this standard of how I should have acted and I didn't. So it was more just apologizing to myself. Like genuinely, I apologize to myself for even telling myself honestly that I have to be so strong, but just like whatever. So if you have done something though, and maybe you're not proud of it, or it depends. Obviously, like my situation was, it was manageable, but I understand that there's things in your life. And I can think about a lot of things in my life too, where I was not proud of doing what I did. And there are people who live their lives in complete regret and hold a lot of shame for the things that they have done. And I understand it's really, really hard. But this is what I'll say. This is what I'll say from somebody who's been really hurt by a parent who's done things that also really regrets. And this has helped my parent, so maybe this will help you. And not everyone's going to respond the same way, but I think this is still helpful. At some point, you have to release the shame and the guilt that you hold based off of like what it is that you did, because at the end of the day, you're never gonna you're not gonna thrive in your life when you're constantly holding shame, okay? And the best thing that you can do, and the only thing that you can really do, is try. And I don't mean try in terms of trying to apologize to get somebody to see it your way and to forgive you and to come back to you and to like accept everything. But sometimes your quote unquote mistakes or your whatever happened does require some level of accountability. So if you need to take accountability, do it. And this is not to try and get a response from someone else, because you cannot be tied to what that person is going to respond to. Maybe that they're still hurt. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe they're still defensive. So they might even throw it back on you and be like, no, you should feel worse about yourself. But I want you to release that shame and that guilt because you deserve it. And if you have to, apologize. And bringing it back to my circumstance of being really hurt by, someone in my life. I've been hurt by a lot of people, and I'm sure I've hurt a lot of people as well. But what has helped me, and I'm not like everyone, so I might not be the person that's going to be the same as who you're going to apologize to, but what's really helped me be able to heal my relationship with my parent is her coming to me and apologizing and owning things. And it took a while. Like it didn't, you have to build trust and you have to whatever, but God did it really, really help me to see that my feelings were not invalidated, I wasn't crazy for feeling like this. Like I really felt the love, and I really felt the shame, the guilt, the regret that my parent has still for some of the things that I've had to go through. And now I'm a very, very mature person, and I really understand that people just do things because they're hurting. So this is why I'm saying, like, some people are not going to really like understand your apology or like really like be warm, because you know they have their own things and it's their own thing. Like, they don't need to take that apology if that's on them. But for me, the reason why I can really let somebody apologize is because I genuinely like I understand. So regardless, I do think it is helpful for you and that person, if you need to be a mature adult. Send a message, however you need to, make a call. And it's very much so, I am so sorry for the things. I recognize the things that I didn't like the way that I showed up. I didn't, whatever, I'm working on these things, X, Y, and Z. I'm not expecting you to understand, to accept it, to anything. I just need you to know that genuinely I am sorry. And you're only going to be apologizing though if you really mean it. Don't be saying these things if you just want some sort of result. That's when I sometimes think, I'm like, I don't really know if that's like a true apology. But I think that once you learn how to forgive yourself and understand, like, wow, you know, I got to give myself more compassion for the things that I've done, you're better able to extend that and face that. But when you're carrying the shame and you're hating yourself for things, it's no wonder sometimes that you can't show up. And I will say this, for anyone who is currently waiting for an apology for someone else because you know they did you dirty, you know that they're in the wrong, and you're like, wow, it really hurts that they're not apologizing to me, like it would help me so much. Understand, if you're not getting an apology, most likely it's because that person's living with a lot of shame and guilt. And I know that doesn't make everything good, because you still would love the apology, but I really think that that helps you on times where you do not get that closure, because I understand some people don't get that closure. And the way that I create closure for myself is understanding that hurt people hurt people. This is not condoning it. This is not accepting it. It just, unfortunately, it is what it is. So if I'm not getting something, I'm going to tell myself, you know what? This person's still hurting. Even if you want to believe that this person is so happy in their life and, oh, but they're over here doing this and they don't seem like they're remorseful, you don't know a thing deep down that they're holding. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've held it myself, and I've been around people who've really deeply held it. You really do not know what is going on. Okay. So hopefully that can help in terms of sending an apology. Be an adult if you have to. Like, that might be a part of you forgiving yourself if you need to, and also maybe creating closure for yourself if you're not getting it right now. And my last reminder would be this: whether you did something to the point where you have to apologize to someone, or you didn't, like me, like I don't have to apologize really, whatever it is, understand that you are working on years of limiting beliefs, changing, evolving, getting out of patterns, healing from trauma at the end of the day. Okay? So you are not going to have perfect days. You're just not. And I know so bad you want to. And I know you get mad at yourself sometimes when you're like, oh, I didn't wake up and have my morning routine perfectly, or I didn't go to the gym and I had this bad, crappy mental health day, or I acted out of this way and I should have been stronger. I get it. But at the end of the day, you are working on yourself. There are going to be days where your self-concept's not perfect. You don't have all the confidence in the world. You break down even though you logically shouldn't be breaking down right now. X, Y, and Z. Remind yourself of that. And that's what I had to remind myself of too. And that's what allowed me to be like, you know what? Heaven forbid I'm a freaking normal human being who's, working on herself every single day and getting up and all of this kind of stuff. I'm taking responsibility in my life. I'm doing everything that I possibly can do. Okay? There's just going to be days where it's not perfect. You are trying to literally change who you are as a person. You're trying to be a better person. You're trying to respond to things in better ways. You're trying to grow. You're trying to be more mature. You're trying not to be so anxious all the time. Take care of yourself more because you haven't been. You're trying to do all of these things. It's inevitable that you're going to slip up. It's inevitable that you're going to fall down and like, oh shit, like that was not what I meant to do, like that. And I think it's really important because that perspective really allows you to continue to get back up, right? Because at the end of the day, we do have to get back up. We are people who want to create our own dream life. We want to have great relationships. We want to have great X, Y, and Z. And that led me to today. I feel so much better than I did last night. And honestly, I knew that I needed to go through all of that because one, what a great message to share to you guys, but two, that really was a piece of the puzzle that I needed in order to become the person that I am trying to become in my own life right now. And I talk about this all the time and nobody wants to hear it when you're going through it because it's like, I don't want this fucking piece. Thank you. Like, just give me the puzzle. Done. But if you are trying to be the best version of yourself, you want that dream house, dream car, dream job, dream friendship, romantic partnership, everything. It's literally going to require you to be more loving to yourself, to be more kind to yourself, to learn that you're going to be safe even when you mess up. It's just going to require you to do that. It really is at the end of the day. And sometimes we're trying to be that person or trying to get to that person by being the old version of us who is a perfectionist and who never lets herself cry or never lets herself like be a human being. And it just doesn't even make sense. So when it comes to forgiving yourself, it's going to take some time depending on whatever it is that you're currently going through. Give yourself grace, give yourself time. You did not mess anything up. Okay, I just want to like reiterate that because that was like the message that like I really needed to hear is like you didn't mess anything up. Okay. And during this moment, focus on yourself. You are your number one priority. Sometimes when we think that we've messed up or we're not doing good enough, we really like run away from ourselves. And actually what we need is to come so much more closer to ourselves. Like we need to give ourselves a big hug. We need to speak words of affirmation into us. We need to remind ourselves that we do not need to be perfect. Nothing in life requires us to be perfect. That is just an illusion. We don't need to. And at the end of the day, just come inwards. It's not about running away from the situation and hiding and being like, oh, I'm so ashamed and like distancing yourself from people, whatever. If you have to say sorry, you have to say sorry, this, that. Detach from the situation or whatever it is for a moment. Pour into yourself. Build yourself back up because right now you're probably feeling a little bit crappy about yourself. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, did I feel the best about myself like the past like day and a half? No. So I knew what I needed to do after I realized, heaven forbid, I'm a freaking human being. I'm going to forgive myself. I'm going to like let myself like be a normal human being. I was like, okay, I got to rebuild myself up right now though, because I lost a little bit of my confidence. You know, I lost a little bit of my, I don't know. I just think sometimes like when we make a mistake, especially when it comes to like other, I don't know, in relation to other people, I think that's always kind of how it is. We're just like, we're really vulnerable. And it's almost like you're in this energy of like this young kid who is like, oh my God, like I'm so bad. Like I'm so bad and I'm so wrong. So when your inner child is feeling like, oh my God, I'm so bad, I'm so wrong, everyone hates me, what does your inner child need at that point, right? Your inner child needs to hear, no, you're great, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're whatever, you didn't do anything wrong, like everything's gonna be fine. You know, yes, this person might be mad over here, but it's gonna be fine. You're a good person. You aren't like inherently a bad person for doing this thing. Let's take your mind off of this thing. You know, we've been ruminating on it for so long. What can we do in this moment? What do you need that's going to make you feel happy? Do we need to play over here? Do we need to pour into ourselves? Do we need to get our minds off of it and like really in our adult lives, it's really all about routine, right? Not focusing on anything else. Stop ruminating and thinking about a million things that you can't change right now, or the things that are quote unquote messed up if you still can't think about it differently. Focus on yourself. Self-love affirmations in the morning, go to sleep with a night meditation, all about self-love, inner child healing, pour back into yourself. You're a little bit drained right now. Go take a freaking breathwork class, go to yoga, go out for a hot girl walk, listen to a podcast that's going to inspire you again, that's going to motivate you again. Go on Pinterest, get off of toxic social media, stop listening to people who are talking a bunch of crap and like being really negative. Because I think sometimes like also depending on your mental diet, like even if it has nothing to do with like what your situation is at hand, I don't know, sometimes like negative things can really trigger you when you're in this vulnerable state. Like anyone talking about specific things or non-specific things will trigger you. So just be very gentle with yourself and be very loving. Like if that means like you're not listening to any self-improvement right now, or you're not listening to any whatever that's triggering you, like go watch freaking vlogs. You know what I did is I couldn't really I wasn't able to like focus and like do my work after this, even though I kind of like settled down a little bit. I went on YouTube and I started watching Madeline Urgi. I think that's how you say her name. She's the one that's dating Central C. And if you guys are OGs, you know that I was obsessed with Central C. I'm not obsessed with him anymore. Honestly, I'm not obsessed with him anymore. But I do love him. But like I'm not obsessed. She has a YouTube. She's like a new version of Emma Chamberlain. Sorry. Well, she's not a new version, but she gives off Emma Chamberlain vibes. I like her a lot. So anyways, her vlogs, I don't know why they were doing it for me. So I ended up watching those vlogs until I went to sleep. And then I went to sleep with like a self-love meditation, like an 8-hour self-love meditation. And I woke up feeling so much better. And I wrote in my notes app, I journaled, I spoke to myself, and I just kept letting it out. And I literally spent as much time as my inner child needed before I went to bed, like speaking words of love and affirmation into me. Like that's like what I did. It was like I asked myself, do I feel complete? Like, can I go to sleep, or do I feel like I'm still anxious and I'm still worrying? If that's the case, okay, well, obviously you got to go to sleep eventually. But I was like, okay, what do I need to tell myself again and again and again? And it was just self-love affirmations. Like, I'm not a bad person. I'm allowed to mess up. I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not going to be sorry for this. I did this, this, and this. Like maybe for you, it's like reminding yourself, okay, you're going to apologize. You understand why you did that. You're going to be changing moving forward. You're going to give yourself grace, whatever you need. It's like you have to talk to your inner child, because your inner child's really the one that's coming online right now and freaking the F out. So it's like, be with yourself, be there for yourself, pour into yourself. You're your number one priority right now. And over time, you'll feel better. Okay, so I hope this episode helped in any way. Please let me know what you would like to hear next. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're on the podcast, then you can let me know what episodes you want to see or hear next. And if you want to, you can give me a review on Spotify, preferably 5 stars. That would be lovely. If you love the podcast. If you love it, okay? That's it. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.